Greetings. I'm Rosalind Parks, and thank you for tuning in to this edition of National Network View News. In today's broadcast, Sister Sherrie Muhammad joins us in taking a look at the final call article, Black Progress Towards Separation and Sovereignty. For our medical update, Dr. Akili Muhammad talks to us about reducing stress for better health. A recent article in the Final Call newspaper examined Black progress towards separation and sovereignty, including the importance of providing a proper education for our children.
The educators, we want to open with a ministry of education that develops a curriculum for all ghetto schools. Not just for Chicago, but once we develop it, it has to be accepted. See, we're like colonies now. Not the 13 colonies, but in all the major cities, there's a ghetto. The Chinese not called a ghetto. They're in a separate community, but they control the education, the politics, the business of their community. And they function pretty good, separate.
Joining us today is NNV education contributor, Sister Sherrie Muhammad, founder and executive director of Asiatic Minds Online School. Greetings, Sister Sherrie.
Assalamu alaikum, Sister Rosalind. Thank you.
Walaikum salam, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. The public education system has miseducated our children. How can we avoid our students getting an education that leaves them in an inferior position without a future and looking to the slave master for a job?
Once again, thank you for having me, Sister Rosalind, on NNV News. I believe as parents, we have to take the opportunity to do a number of things. One, either pool our resources with like-minded parents to create our own educational experience for our children, or we need to find those type of educational houses that already exist that are going to give our children the knowledge that they need to not be in such an inferior position and to help them to rise up mentally and educationally to understand who they are so that they can take pride in self and utilize their knowledge to do something for themselves and their community.
Now, what education does the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan want for our people?
So through my studies, what I found is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he has stated that a true and proper education starts with the knowledge of God. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad stated that we need to know about self. So we must learn about self. Once we learn about self, once we have a proper knowledge of God, that's going to give us a proper knowledge of and understanding of what is around us and those who we are around. Once we have that understanding, then that's going to cause us to think differently, to utilize the knowledge that we have differently, to do something for ourselves. And so I do want to quote from Message to the Black Man on page 39. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad does say, "Then and only then will they be able to understand others in that which surrounds them." And he said, gaining the knowledge of self makes you take on the great virtue of learning. So once we have a knowledge of self, once we are engulfed in that knowledge of God, that's going to create a thirst for us to continue to learn and continue to grow and pull ourselves out of the situation we're in and into a new direction.
Yes, ma'am. Now, what type of education do our children need in order to remove us from the shackles of slavery and servitude. A lot of the jobs that we see or just have in our world today has us in a position where we're constantly serving others and growing their pockets. So, what type of education would you say is needed for us to get out of that?
So the type of education is one, of course, the base of it is what I just stated, an education that does give the knowledge of self, an education that does give the knowledge of God, but also an education where you see one sees oneself. Because when you look at, and I have to give the same example that the minister gave us before.
Yeah.
If you were in a crowd and someone took a picture and then they handed you the picture, the first person you're going to look for is who? Yourself. Because you want to see yourself and make sure you look good and be able to reflect on, oh, okay, I look good in this photo. So that's the same thing in education. Once we are able to see ourselves in education, then that's going to create that thirst for us to keep growing and advance ourselves in the pursuit of knowledge. Once we get that knowledge, then we can utilize that for the good of ourselves, our family, our nation, and for the benefit of our people.
Now, that's a very, very important piece of the puzzle, which is once we gain knowledge of ourselves, we can use that knowledge to help our community. Um, is Muhammad University of Islam and other independent Muslim and African centered schools better equipped to help students gain knowledge of self?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because if they are absolutely rooted, and we know MUI, Muhammad University of Islam, is rooted in the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad as given to us from Master Fard Muhammad. So we know that that contains light, life, and power within Muhammad University. And so then you have other schools that could be African centered schools that certainly have a base of information that teaches the knowledge of self. Uh, may not necessarily be all the way to the root as such as a Muhammad University, but yes, each of those schools does help us to get where we need to get to. So I would certainly encourage everyone to seek out that type of education because they teach freedom, they teach justice, they teach equality, and those are the bases that we need to really separate and begin to do something for self. We got to give ourselves that justice. We got to give ourselves that freedom. And that's only going to come through a true and proper education.
Yes, ma'am. Now, one of the things that is shifting is the popularity of the online school system. However, some of our brothers and sisters are still in what we would consider the traditional public school system. How can we instill within our people from young to old, college level, how can we instill within our people the desire to continue to learn and then use that learning for self?
So once again, I really do believe that to instill the desire to learn, you
Mm,
have to see yourself in that. That is so attractive to people is to be able to find themselves, to find our people, to find our history, to gain a greater knowledge and understanding of why we are truly the way that we are, who
mm,
we truly are, and not what this world teaches us to be. And then once we have a few of us who take that example of having the truth and then producing for ourselves, and then others serving as that example where others can see that having a true knowledge will produce, we can produce our own reality. We no longer have to
mm.
continue to march and beg and picket signs and all of that, striving to get something from someone else. Because once you have a true and proper education, you understand that everything that you need, that our creator Allah has put that inside of us already. So once we come into unity with self, we could bring from ourselves everything that we need with the
Yes,
help of
ma'am.
Allah.
Yes, ma'am. Now, is it a good time or is it the best time to educate boys and girls separately in the classroom?
You know, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that the first 15 to 16 years, boys and girls should be separated and in education. And that way, if they're separated for the first 15 to 16 years, then they could and they should seek higher education without the fear of losing themselves and disrespecting themselves. So
Yes.
it's so important, you know. Um, I wish that I had that type of education growing up where it would be separate, because if any of us who came up in that mixed type of education with
Yes.
boys and girls, you know, there's a whole subculture that takes place. You know, you're striving, you know, as a young lady to gain the attention and the approval of the young man. So you may not be listening to your lessons. And the same thing with the young men, that they may be goofing off, striving to get the girls' attention as opposed to really focusing their attention on their studies.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
so, and then at that time, you're growing and developing, and that's really a time to focus on learning all about who you are as a young lady. You know, the brothers, excuse me, learning all about themselves as young men, and then, you know, what is expected of them, what is expected of us, you know, how we are to grow and take the gifts that Allah has given us, so that when we do come into contact, not that would never see a boy or never see a girl, but
Right.
you know, when you have those classes where you're just off to yourself, it's so important, because we have two different natures, and those natures have to be fed separately
Yes.
without the interference of the other. And so if you look at it in the Nation of Islam, it still continues. We have
Mhm.
the sisters class, the MGT class, and then the brothers have the FOI class. So it's something that actually continues, because we have to still be fed and nurtured just as women. That's a totally different energy when it's just the sisters. And I know that it's a totally different energy when it's just the brothers. And so we certainly need to have that separation in order to grow in a certain way.
Yes, ma'am. Now, Sister Sherrie, Dr. Ava Muhammad, student and national spokesperson for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, said the COVID-19 pandemic and separation are interrelated. Has the pandemic and the growing resistance in the Black community to the public school system benefited independent schools and online education?
I'm sure it most certainly has. I know that my school has gotten received students because parents do not feel comfortable sending their students to a public school right now. And it's actually shifting the minds of parents. See, when Allah is using this pandemic to actually jar the minds of everyone, to where we really only thought in one certain way and was trained in a certain way as far as education is concerned. But now with this pandemic, it has caused everybody to think outside of the box. So now you have even more of these Zoom meetings. You people are working from home, so you most certainly can think outside the box and have an education that is not just within a four walls, especially of a public school. You know, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says in a torchlight for America that education is the torchlight of civilization. And so I just want to say briefly that the education of this world is going down, because we see the civilization is coming to an end. Our enemy civilization is coming to an end. And so this is absolutely causing a falling away from their educational system. And people are definitely looking for an education that is going to reflect themselves, an education where their children are going to get their souls fed. So not just learning how to read, but learning something, you know, behind that, learning something deeper and more intricate. So absolutely, this pandemic is actually a blessing from Allah, because it is part of the tearing away of the fabric of America. And any of us, you know, those of us who have had nothing but suffering under America, we have to see that this is our time. This is a time for us to just take advantage of what Allah is giving us, and we're making that shift and we're creating our own. And this, it serves as a benefit for this separation. So I know there's been horrible things that have gone on with the pandemic. We've lost a lot of life. And Allah is the best knower of that. But also, this is birthing pains, and it's giving birth to a beautiful, brand new civilization.
Yes, ma'am. Now, Sister Sherrie, there is a recent article in the Final Call newspaper entitled Black Progress Towards Separation and Sovereignty. What role can independent schools and online education play toward Black progress and separation?
So independent schools and online education can offer that new education, be a part of a new educational paradigm that causes a new civilization that is actually taking place. In that article, it talks about all of these acres of land that Black people are buying and purchasing, and creating our own towns, creating, have all of these plans to literally separate. We're separating. And since education is the torchlight of civilization, we want that separation to go on forever. We want that civilization that is being birthed through this separation to be strong and to last. And so if education is the torchlight for that, then these online schools, these independent schools, we must offer education that is not the repeat of public school with just a Black face slapped on top of it. That's not going to work, because if that is what the education is, then the new civilization will die, just as the civilization that we live in now. So we must be a part of the new educational paradigm that starts where the education starts with the knowledge of God, and then it moves on, and it folds in the knowledge of self, which is the knowledge of God once you really understand. And it grows from there and teaches the true history of all people, the true history of the world, the universe, the sciences, the high levels of mathematics, and everything that folds into that high level of art and expression on a much higher level than what we see in this world. This world, a lot of our art and everything is on a low level, but there's so much that we can reach for. And so that's what education, independent education, we have to think along those lines to reach higher and to think outside of the box. Don't even recreate what we've seen and what we see in this fallen society, but to study the teachings that have been given to us by Master Father Muhammad through the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and that is delivered to us through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And if we focus on what that which is being given to us, then we are going to soar with this new educational paradigm.
Yes, ma'am. I completely agree. Sister Sherrie, thanks so much for joining us this week. We look forward to speaking with you again next week.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Sister Rosalind. Thank you,
Yes,
in News, and thank you to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and his family for their love, for their sacrifice in order for myself to be here and the rest of us who follow him. Assalamu alaikum.
Yes. Walaikum salam. Let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. Afterward, Dr. Akili Muhammad joins us to discuss reducing stress for better health. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. Cash App NNV News.
AsiaticMinds.com. Online education, helping our children to discover their God-given skills, gifts, talents, and passion that will allow them to see their greatness, as well as the greatness of our people. And upon discovering that greatness, infusing them with the desire to use it for the betterment of themselves, their families, our people, and the world. 2022 through 23 enrollment waiting list open now. Visit AsiaticMinds.com.
Worldwide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download the Final Call radio app and take us everywhere. On your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also log on to finalcall.com and click the Listen Live button or finalcallradio.com. Final Call Radio, the official voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
Thank you for tuning in to NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View. This is Clifton Muhammad with NNVnews.com.
Stress is a major player in our daily lives, but is often overlooked as a factor in our health.
God created the heavens and the earth, and all of this is in perfect balance. He created you and me, and He gives us chemistry that gives us perfect balance. But the stress depletes what the brain produces, and due to chemical imbalance, we have mental breakdowns. Are you listening to me? A person perfectly normal, a good person, but they're just exhausted from stress, and all of a sudden they start going off. You see them becoming hyper, you know, what's happening? I think they're going off. How do you stop it? They take them to the hospital. They give them a drug that produces the chemical balance. And within days, they feel all right. Why couldn't we produce the chemical balance without the drug? Come on, this is the end of it now. You hung in there with me this long. Just hang a few more minutes. What the white man does when you go off, he gives you a drug, and then you become dependent on the drug. So now every week, 2 weeks, you go into the drugstore buying prescriptions.
Today, Dr. Akili joins us to give us more insight on this topic. Greetings, Dr. Akili.
Greetings, ma'am. Good to see you.
Great to see you as well. Dr. Akili, you have told us on numerous occasions that reducing stress will help us make better choices during this pandemic and all of the confusion that it has caused. Can you expound on some of those ways to do this?
Well, you have to first have a good understanding of where your stress is coming from. And a lot of times that takes slowing down, doing an inventory of your life and what aspects of your life are stressing you out. The one that's been most prevalent to me during this pandemic is media and people spending a lot of time listening to mainstream media and how they continue to push the idea of fear on the public. And so that would be a major aspect of stress for many people because the mainstream media is talking about all of the lack, right? How many people are dying and how congested the hospitals are and how many people are sick in this city. All of these type of things will put you in a state of thinking that something is going to happen to you, promoting fear versus looking at the reality that if I have taken care of myself to some degree, the largest killer in America is still heart attacks. So maybe I can keep myself from having that type of a problem or keep myself from having a stroke. And then looking at the statistics that are actual about this COVID-19 pandemic, in that 98% of the people that are getting the infection are getting over it with mild disease, are not winding up in the hospital. And so if we kind of just look at that as just one example of how to balance things and keep ourselves away from the inundation of fear, that's going to drive up the stress effects in the body.
Yes, sir. Now, previously, we've spoken about some foods that we should avoid. Can you share with us some foods that we should include in our diet in order to reduce stress?
Well, I don't actually contend with that idea that there's certain foods that will help you with stress. There are foods that continue to allow the body to heal, allow the body to maintain itself in a good way, and allows itself to kind of monitor what is wrong and what needs to be dealt with in the body. That is the best thing to do to keep the body functioning at a high rate so that no matter what else happens, it has the ability to overcome that. And so again, I don't believe that there's a specific food that you can eat that's going to stop stress or reverse stress. You have to do that with some of the other things that we're going to talk about in a minute. But the point of eating good food is to make sure that your body has the ability to sustain itself. And then any negative that comes from the stress that you may be under, your body can overcome that and reverse the damage or reverse the negatives that those stressful events can have on the body, which they definitely can do.
Yes, sir. Now, speaking of things that can help reduce stress, exercise is said to reduce stress. Is there a scientific way to explain what is happening in our bodies to cause, to explain why exercise reduces stress?
Yes, there are many, many studies that are out in the scientific community on how stress is improved by physical activity, specifically an exercise program for the majority of us. And that would be number one. With exercise, you get an improved blood flow in areas of the body that typically aren't getting an excessive amount, right? When we sit and we have sedentary lifestyles, that causes certain areas of your body to not have the type of blood flow that they should. So when you get up and you start moving around and you're doing things specifically for the sake of exercise, you have to some degree removed some of the physical ramifications of stress that we cause on ourselves because of the activities that we're involving ourselves with. And so improved blood flow happens with exercise. One of the great benefits of exercise is the endorphins. These are the natural painkillers in the human body. And so, of course, sometimes when you're in physical activity, you can work yourself where you get a little tired, or work yourself where you have some pain. And so the endorphins that are released during exercise help suppress that pain, but also these are feel-good hormones like your serotonin, like your dopamine. Endorphins have that same beneficial effect on the body. I'm sure many people have heard of the term a runner's high. Well, that high that they get is the endorphin release from the hormonal system, as well as the serotonin and dopamine that benefit the body. And so these things put the mind in a place and the brain in a place where it feels better. And then included in that is that when we exercise, there may be a little bit of damage. There may be a little strain or this or that on a certain muscle or a certain aspect of the body. And when you're exercising, you put the body in a much better capability of healing all of that damage. So it's just beautiful all the way around when it comes to how the body is benefited from stress when we exercise.
Yes, sir. Now, another thing that a lot of people like to do is listen to music. Sometimes we seek to relieve stress through consuming different types of music. Is something like this as effective as the right foods or exercise?
Yes, I would say that that definitely is as effective, and we're talking about, for lack of a better term, like a gumbo approach, right? There are many different aspects on how you improve your body's ability to deal with your stress. At the same time, you're trying to decrease how much stress you're being exposed to. But there are many studies out there as well as music being a very important aspect of helping people relieve and manage their stress. Now, we have to understand that there are certain aspects of music, right? You can't just go to any music.
Right.
There's scientific proof that a lot of the rap music that we have these days with the deep bass, that can actually do some things to the body that aren't necessarily positive. But there also is information out there that classical music, jazz music, and other types of music can actually calm the soul, calm the mind. It actually will improve some of those same hormones that we were discussing when we talked about exercise. Some of those same things can happen with music. And so, again, that's the gumbo effect, right? We may have the ability to exercise 2 or 3 days a week and may have a little chance to listen to some music on the way home from work. Whatever it is that you have to incorporate using a lot of different activities is what usually will give you the best way to have your body overcome the stresses that sometimes just come with the reality of life.
Yes, sir. Now, one of the things that I've seen on social media personally is the increase of people advocating to get outside. And I believe even you talked about the importance of getting outside into some fresh air and some sun whenever possible. Why does being out in nature reduce stress levels in the body for some people?
Well, the quick answer is that that's why God made it. When you go to scriptures, whether you're talking about the Bible or the Quran, it talks over and over and over again about how the God that we serve produced this beauty out here for our benefit. And so that would be the first place for anybody to start, that God did produce a reality for stress relief for us. It's for the beauty and the things that beauty brings to us. In addition, there are many people that talk about the benefits of aromatherapy on relieving the stress of the body. And you can get into specific times, but specific kinds. But in general, we're talking about an aroma that comes from plants, trees, grass, nature in general, that are made to help benefit the body. They help the body heal. They help calm down the body. They help the body have an improved immune system. And so when we go outside, of course, and soak up some of that sunshine and smell some of the aromas and get maybe some of the oils from nature on the skin, these things are known to improve the body. And there are specific studies that have been done over the last few years where they will actually take stressed people or people that have been diagnosed with depression and anxiety or have had serious medical issues where they're in hospitals for long periods of time. And they have proven by certain type of markers in our blood work that going out and spending a certain amount of time in nature will literally bring that person to coming to some of their own conclusions on what will benefit them. But that aspect of being in nature is really a great gift, a great calmer for the body, and a great booster of us solving some of our own problems.
Okay. Now, Dr. Keeley, on page 20 of How to Eat to Live, Book 1, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said fast once a month for 3 days, 4 days, or whatever length of time you are able to go without food, without harming yourself, and you will feel good. If fasting can help you feel better health-wise, can it help lower your level of stress when you become experienced with it?
Absolutely. And if we just look at one aspect of that, right, there is a stress level in going and shopping for food and getting home and preparing a meal.
Yes.
Getting the family together, trying to get everybody's schedule met. So there's an aspect of stress right there. And so when we're looking at the reality of fasting, it not only has benefits on our body, but it actually takes away from some of the activities that go into our daily life. So here's the benefit going to another level, right? If we're talking about a household with no children and the family is fasting, then you don't have any problems at all. But if you're a parent and you have to still take care of children, there still is a less advent of stress, because there are less meals that have to be prepared, less potential amounts that have to be prepared. So that's just one aspect. I think the other aspect that we have to also take in consideration are the benefits of the peace of saying that I'm fasting. Because for a person to come to the conclusion, I'm going to fast, I'm going to give up something that has the ability to keep me alive, that's a sacrifice that you have to come to certain conclusions in your mind, right? I'm going to do this for God, or I'm going to do this for my community. Whatever the reason is, those are high levels of thinking. That's not surface level or ignorant thinking. And so automatically you're taking your thought process and the conversations to a higher level because it's based in God. And that within itself will bring you some peace, which will manifest itself in just about everything we're doing while we're fasting, if we're doing it correctly.
So, Dr. Akili, very quickly, the Ultimate Wellness Group, what is new with you and the group today?
Well, the Ultimate Wellness Group has now gone pay-per-view or subscription-based. I'm using this platform, blackstream.live, to produce a financial backing for a healing center. And so the free presentations are over. And so it's now time for people to either donate or support the Ultimate Wellness Group. You can go to blackstream.live/TUWG/Tuesday and look at the different offers that we have. And so the same great content based in How to Eat to Live by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, based on the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the teachings through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. That's always going to be the foundation of the Ultimate Wellness Group. But at the end of the day, we're moving forward, trying to get a physical building, a physical center where people can remove themselves from this stress, right, of life, and remove yourselves from potentially a stress of certain toxic environments and come to a place where you can learn some activities that you can put into your life. And when you go back home or when you go back to where you came from, you have a new lifestyle that you can implement and try to achieve the ultimate wellness.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Akili, as always, for your medical insight. We look forward to speaking with you again next week.
Always a pleasure. I look forward to it.
Yes, sir. Thank you for joining us today and tuning into National Network View News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, NNV News. This is Rosalind Parks with National Network View News. Good night.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.